Welcome to the Public Narrative Podcast with Jhmira Alexander. I am joined here with two of my college buddies, so please prepare for just a reunion, all sorts of shenanigans, storytelling. Glenn Dougherty and Shafondra Matthews. So good to be here with you all and can reconnect after so many years. How y'all been?
Absolutely. Good, good. It's good to see you.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, of course, of course. So just, we've been catching up a little bit even before we started recording. And it's just so good to just be, in great company, reminiscing and whatnot, and to see you all together after so many years. Yeah. And just a celebration of Black love on your About This Life podcast. Talk a little bit about how you got to that point, or even just I guess kind of share a bit more about your own individual stories.
Yeah. That's a long story, but
individual story. So I'll just give a little background about myself. So I'm, Chicago native. I was born on the west side of Chicago. Grew up in the west suburbs. Why are you laughing?
I mean,
he's a South Sider, so it's a rivalry. Rivalry. I can't say that word. So yeah, grew up in the west suburbs. I did my college career. We met at Bradley, right? Studied business there. That's where I also met him. And we had some interesting times in college. Went on to have two boys, and eventually we got married, and then we weren't married, and now we're back together.
now we're married again.
We're back together. There's a lot in between there. I recently completed my master's at Medill, actually.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, in integrated marketing communications. So, I'm a wife, I'm a mom, a podcaster, and I'm happy to be here.
Awesome.
Yeah. She's got more accolades than I do. But to kind of fill in the gap. So we met in college, and my career has always been in finance. Always had that entrepreneurial spirit, from my father. So when I graduated college, I was originating loans and doing real estate, and I did that for a while, up until I joined the corporate world about 12 years ago, 12, 13 years ago. And it's been good, and so I've gone onto my own journey to develop my own brand and, getting into the sobriety community and talking about, issues with alcohol and health and fitness. And, we can talk more about that. But yeah.
That's incredible. And I'll just say, I remember you being so business oriented. So we went to college at a time where AOL Instant Messenger was a thing. You had your we know them now as handles, but you had your username, and yours was One Smart Black Boy.
Yeah. I actually still use that.
Certain
logins and stuff like that.
I love it. But I mean, talk a little bit about why did you even choose business or choose finance? Because clearly that is where you are connected. Yeah. And you remain connected, and I frankly see see family as a business, and how you've been able to establish your business, your family, in that way. So how did you even wind up? And you talked a little bit about the entrepreneurial spirit from your father, but why loan origination, and are you still in that?
Yeah,
and
that's a good question. Yeah. So it all came from my dad, because as long as I can remember, he was a real estate investor. That was the first thing I remember. And he worked in the corporate world for ComEd for a while, but he eventually started his own insurance business. He started with Allstate and built that from the ground up. And he had also built another insurance business. So observing him, that's where I got that from. And then that just kind of stuck with me. And so once I did get into the corporate world, and I only did that just because I was tired of working in the family business.
Sure.
So having that dynamic of always talking about business with family, it got kind of tiresome. And so once I got to the corporate world, I realized how much I disliked working for other people. But, it's still great opportunity, just working my way up the corporate ladder and using those entrepreneurial skills within the corporate world has helped me as well. So
Yeah.
I think that's part of that success. But yeah, it's all, I would say, I wouldn't say all, but most of it is from my father, just given his background and observing him.
And then you went from business then to get your master's in integrated marketing communication. Like, what led you down that path?
So we were the exact same major in college, business management and entrepreneurship. So we connected on that as well. But I also have the entrepreneurial spirit. I think it came from when I was in high school. Well, when I was getting ready to go to high school, my mom made this impactful decision. She decided to send me to a predominantly white Catholic high school when I had been in school with, black and brown kids like my entire life. And when I went to that school, it kind of opened my eyes to a completely different world. I was exposed to so many more things. I was exposed to kids that had wealth. Their parents were doctors and they had their own businesses. So I think that started to spark my curiosities like, well, you can do more, you can have more. I grew up working class, my family's working class, and that's great. But you can aspire to have a life and build wealth. And so I think that's where the seeds started to get planted when I was in high school. And then just throughout my studying like different businesses, I learned that marketing is like basically the lifeblood of all businesses. It's like a common thing that you need regardless of what you're selling. If you're selling insurance or you're, selling cars, like if you're a good marketer, then, you can have a successful business. And so when I decided to get my master's, this is a general degree. So I said, let me specialize in something, get something more targeted. And I just chose integrated marketing communications.
It's interesting because, we all connect through Bradley University, a predominantly white institution. And I know for me, coming into Bradley, it's like the same year Drumline came out. And so now many of us were mad, like we don't have a Drumline, we don't have a football team. But I will say that, the education was great, don't get me wrong, and it cost a lot. But the thing that I appreciated most about Bradley was the relationships. And the experiences and the times that we had was just legendary, right? Like a lot of fun, a lot of fun. I know. So what I appreciate, right, in life coming full circle. So, and just in total transparency, so we can let folks in on what we're even talking about. Once upon a time, Glenn and I were drinking partners. And when I tell you, we used to get it in. Yes. We used to get it in. But in that, not only was it exciting and just, like a family, very much so, that it seemed like when I reached a point where it was like, I can't get drunk every weekend like this. You know what I mean? Like I need to find more purpose, and I don't know how else to do that but to zero in on what is right in front of me. And in doing that, I reached a point where I haven't had anything to drink in maybe 12 years and haven't even been tempted. But I'm gonna tell you why. It's because I learned that I could think on a level. I'm not athletic. Now I'm tall, but I'm not athletic. I'm not a model. If I'm to make any money and be wealthy, it's gonna be through how I think and how am able to connect the dots. And I just remember, frankly, being drunk and reckless.
A lot of those moments.
And recognize when I saw how I could think on a level that was far beyond what I had ever imagined, I didn't want to tamper with that. And so I didn't necessarily go to AA or anything like that, but though, it was that bad that perhaps I needed to. But I didn't necessarily go to AA, but I knew enough to know that I don't want to tamper with how I'm able to think on this level and what the fruit I'm able to see of that. Talk a little bit about your own journey.
Yeah, I was gonna say, that's impressive that you recognize that.
Yeah.
Because at that time, I would say it was kind of like the height of, our party days almost.
Yeah.
And so, and I talked about it on our show that I was like, damn, I lost a friend kind of, when you decided to get sober.
Yeah.
And there was a little bit of resentment. It was immature of me at the time because
and my stepping away was immature of me, and like, how do I tell these people I've been getting drunk with for years, hey, I'm good? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So no, I feel you.
And that's kind of how it went. Like, I felt like the communication was just like done.
Yeah.
Right. And as I went through, my journey, I had some more issues down the line. And so for me, I didn't do AA either, but it was, going through therapy, and there were some situations that kind of forced me to get it together. It was a divorce and losing my family. And so I decided, like, hey, I got to get my life together. Because if I continued on that path, I would have been dead or in jail.
For
like
real.
Literally.
For real.
Like,
For real.
Having been arrested several times, putting my life at risk, other people's life at risk during those situations of drinking. So once I got sober, it was, I look back on that moment, when you decided to get sober. I'm like, yeah, I understand, why she did that. And that was impressive to even recognize that at the time.
Man, listen, I felt like I was literally running for my life. Like, this is spiraling and I don't have control over it. Yeah. And I remember one time, and this is when I knew, like, this was the beginning of the end for real. Like, drinking, going out, kicking it, and on the dance floor, and my heart is beating faster than what I can even keep up with, right?
Really?
Holy crap.
Yes.
Wow.
But I'm just like, something's got to give. Wow. And I remember one time, so I was living on the East Coast, and I remember I had called home and was talking to my mother, like, this was like 3 days in a row. Okay. And every day that I was talking to her, what you doing? The first day, oh, making a margarita. The next day, what you doing? Making a margarita. On the third day, when I said making a margarita, she was like, are you okay? So I didn't recognize, it had gone from social drinking to like something much more serious. That I'm just like, something's got to give. Something has got to give. But what I've learned about being able to advocate for self is like in being able to prioritize like the decisions that you have to make for yourself and being able to have whatever conversations, particularly as not wanting to sever ties, but wanting to be able to stand in like, this is what I need without any outside influence. And at the time, I didn't know how to do that. Like, I didn't know how to shut down the outside influence. Because we were, like, tethered.
Yeah. And that's good that you said that, because if you did talk to me,
oh my God, you would have joked. I know. We were taking shots.
Right. So it's good that you kind of cut off the communication.
So terrible.
I mean, me at that time, that's what I would have did. Like, wait, hold on, you want to do what?
Right.
You want to stop drinking?
Right. And I think too, I would have seen it as what I'm giving up versus what I'm gaining.
Right.
You know what I mean? And like, so it wasn't that it was easy to walk away. Because it certainly wasn't. But it was a hard decision that I had to truly risk it all for. And I've had to do that in other relationships, not just with like drinking partners. Like, I've had to do that in that if I need to step away from this for this season, I got to trust that somehow it could be mended. And I don't know. So when you all came up with your podcast, and it's about Black love, and you're very transparent in the stories that you tell of how you all got here, I'm just like, at some point I gotta have them on the podcast. Gotta talk to them about how they got here, because at the time that I stepped away, it did not look like this.
No.
So how did we get here?
You know that song, I Had a Praying Grandmother? Well, I actually did. I had a praying grandmother and a praying mother. So, prayer, lots of therapy, and time. So yeah.
Yeah, a lot of therapy.
Yeah, individual. So we each went on our own journey, and then couples therapy.
Yeah.
But what point of the story do you want to focus on? Because it's
see,
so much.
This is the part that I'm curious about. Like, how do you stay that long? And like, did you trust that it was gonna work out? Like, did you have any inclination that like one day it'll be what you want it to be?
So here's the thing. The reason why I stayed so long is basically I had self-esteem issues. And so I think someone asked me, like, when he was going through his stuff with like drinking, like, did I seek to understand? Well, I really didn't. I just kind of let him run amok because I was so busy in my own headspace, dealing with, at that time being a young mom, being unemployed. I'm financially dependent upon him. He's irresponsible, and it was a lot. And I carried a lot of guilt. I carried a lot of shame because here I am, like, this A student, this person that's always done well for herself, and I'm in this relationship that's, it's a mess. And so I didn't talk to anybody really. I didn't really ask for help. But yeah, so that went on for years, and years, and time is just rolling by, and I'm just in it. We're just existing. A lot of stuff is going on. So it wasn't like I was conscious, like, oh, I'm waiting on this to get better. It was just, hey, we're just in survival mode, trying to get through life on a day-to-day basis. And I really didn't, to be honest, because we didn't get married until like 15 years. It was a long time. I didn't prioritize marriage because I didn't see successful marriages like immediately. My mom she was married. She was never married to my father. But, that relationship with my stepdad, it was tumultuous. So I'm like, if that's what it's going to be like, I'm good. So, yeah.
Yeah. And then it took for the relationship / marriage to burn to the ground, and we got divorced. And so I think that actually kind of helped us in the end. Like, I don't think it had to happen that way, but I say it kind of helped us in the end because that's when I decided to truly put in the work and get myself together. And that's what she ended up recognizing. And that started us having conversations and, potentially getting back together and eventually getting back together. But then also, doing the work as a couple and eventually, mending the relationship. But it was a lot of work. But yeah, the whole thing just had to burn to the ground first.
Yeah. You hear a lot about women going to therapy, but what made you as a man, like, go ahead and submit and go to therapy?
It's funny you asked that because I didn't think anything of it at the time, because at the time I started going to therapy, it really wasn't something that was widely talked about like it is now. And I didn't really talk about it too much because it just wasn't a popular thing to discuss at the time. But I tell this story, the thing that made me go to therapy was, me having a relationship outside of the marriage. I obviously knew it was wrong, but I was just so confused. Like, I needed to get help. Like, this is not right. I need to fix this. And it eventually went from trying to fix myself and my relationship to getting into the alcohol issues. And so it just kind of evolved. But yeah, really just wanting to make things better. I didn't want to continue living, sad and confused and, drunk all the time.
Yeah.
So it was just the only thing I knew to do outside of, AA, but that just didn't really resonate with me. So yeah, therapy just ended up being a thing that worked the best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how did the podcast come to be?
That's your brainchild.
Yeah, I actually had the idea for like years. But we just weren't ready. I wasn't ready. I wasn't in the right headspace. One, I had to come to terms with, being open and willing to share and be transparent and being okay with whatever comes with that. But yeah, I've been a content creator for years. I took a break around the time that we got divorced because I was going through a lot of personal stuff. I self-published a book several years ago. So it's like a natural evolution of, me just being a content creator, wanting to share. And I thought, I'm like, hey, if anyone has an interesting story, why not? So yeah, About This Life was born. After doing some research and like, hey, let's just go for it.
So there's a woman that was on the podcast who talks about, like, she says this all the time, like, when you're healed, you're able to tell like your story in totality, right? Like there's not a piece of it that you feel like you need to hide or cover up or anything like that. And so in listening to the podcast and watching some of the videos on IG, I'm just like, they are telling everything, right? Everything. And y'all's podcast is like a trip down memory lane because it's like you might open up with this story thread and then I'm recalling like deeper details, like so it's like you are really going there. Like, did it take for you all to kind of sit down and discuss like how you would approach it, or in the moment do you just go for it?
I think before we really started recording, I had to make sure that she was okay with sharing everything, because I'm like, hey, we're gonna put it out there, like, are you okay? Right? So it was a conversation that we had to have. And she eventually got comfortable and
And to be honest, sometimes like in the beginning I went through a period where I was like, oh my God, everything is out there, and sometimes I still go through those bouts, but we've received like so much positive feedback. People start opening up to us, texting us, sharing like their stories and things that they've gone through. So it's like we're making a positive impact. And at the end of the day, everybody has a story. Everybody has gone through something. It's nothing to be ashamed of. We had a difficult time, and then that's what it was. And we worked and healed individually and collectively. And I think that's more powerful to tell that story than, just be held back by my fear of, being judged of what people may think about it.
What I love is that your podcast shows, and your story period, shows that Black love is not perfect, but it's beautiful. And I can't help but think that you referenced esteem issues, but you had a great deal of patience also in navigating, like, to get to this point. Because like many women are just like, look, no, thank you, right? But it's good to hear that at least it on the surface it looks like you don't regret the decision of staying, or you didn't make the decision to stay because of the children. Like, this was your sole decision in, how you wanted your family.
Yeah, well, I would be remiss if I didn't say the children did play a big factor in it. They definitely played a part because, again, I've always wanted a nuclear family. But at a certain point, I wasn't afraid to walk away. Like, I walked away a couple of times from the relationship. One time he came home on a Tuesday morning at 7 a.m. after being out all night. And I was like, you know what? We're done. So, yeah, it was a lot of factors in that. But I wasn't afraid to walk away when I knew I felt it wasn't right. At a certain point, it was like, even though we have children, this isn't right. I'm not willing to invest any more time or sit in this any longer. So, yeah. And it just so happened that he started to get himself together and improve so that we could come back together. So, yeah.
So give me time frames. You all got married, got divorced, got married again. What time span is this?
We got married in October 2015.
Yeah.
And then we couldn't even celebrate our 1 year anniversary because that's when, she found out about the affair. And so we got divorced, February 2017. Got back together 6 months after that. Then the therapy, couples counseling. we got remarried in February this year.
This year,
Yeah.
2023.
Yeah. On February 3rd, 2323. So we did the courthouse thing. We're still gonna do the whole wedding, but
you didn't miss anything.
Yeah.
No, it's all good.
Yeah.
I didn't realize it was this year though.
Yeah,
it was this year.
Yeah, we did the date, the 2323. So like, all right, cool, let's do that. And so,
I know we're always.
He's
doing
so
something.
spontaneous though. But I love how you roll with it. I really do. I really do. I love how you roll with it. Like, I saw that you all were on Kev on Stage and his wife on their podcast, right? Or was it Black Love? Black Love.
Yeah,
Okay.
Couch Conversations.
Yeah.
And they were the hosts.
Okay.
Last year?
Yeah, it was last year.
Yeah.
How
September, I think it aired.
did that happen?
Oh man.
I saw the ad or posting on IG, and they were looking for couples. They were shooting the next season, and I sent him a message. I'm like, hey, you want to submit for this? And he was like, yeah. And they gave us, topics to choose from, and we're like, okay, the therapy topic will be perfect. So I just wrote up a little, a little blurb about our relationship, and I submitted, and then we got a call back to do an interview. So we had to do an interview through Zoom with one of the producers, and this is how I knew we had it, because those interview slots were only 15 minutes, but we talked to him for like a half an hour.
Yeah. That's how you know when they give you time.
Yeah.
For real.
Yeah, and he was
For
like,
real.
I want to see you all in LA. So we
That's
were selected, and
And they flew you out and everything.
Well, it wasn't a paid gig,
Yeah.
so
Okay.
it was on us.
All
but-
good.
But still, it's just like, hey,
I
how
mean,
many times you get that
Absolutely,
opportunity, you know?
absolutely, absolutely. No, that's outstanding. And the Black Love series is incredible. Like, in just the range of experiences of Black couples.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't even say that like y'all's story is like unheard of, but I guess for me to be in close proximity, it's like I don't know too many couples that stick it out the way y'all have. Like,
Yeah, it doesn't happen often.
Yeah.
You know,
No, it
like especially just everything that I've done to this woman, like I would have never thought that we'd end up back together. You know, I knew I had to chalk it up. I'm like, damn, I lost my family. All right, I gotta just be better for the next person.
Yeah. Well, I will say, in his defense, he always knew he had a real one, though.
Oh,
like,
absolutely.
For real.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. I know she was a good woman.
He really did. He really did. But what I love is like, I know for the time that like we were hanging out, I don't know that I could have seen 15 years later. You know what I mean? Like, what does that even look like, right? Yeah. So to sit here for real is like a miracle, right?
It is.
It
We
is.
say it all the time.
Man, it's such a miracle. Like, what type of support did you all have from your families as you were going through this?
So, I guess I'll go first. Like, my main support system, I would say, was my mom, and I would say that because, as we were going through our divorce, my mom and I, we were having a lot of conversations, and she would share, what she went through when she was getting divorced from my father. And there was a lot of similarities because my mom, she had, issues with alcohol, and I could learn from her stories, and we could identify with each other. But also my parents, my dad and my stepmom, they were there for me. But my friends didn't really know how much alcohol affected me. So I I didn't really lean on them till like after the fact. It was like, damn, dude, you should have told me. But it was really my parents, during my sobriety and then also recovering from the divorce.
Well, I really didn't talk to anybody while I was going through that. And I didn't tell, like, my mom and my sister, like, we're all close, but I didn't tell them until, like, I had already filed. I told a couple of my friends. But I would say my mom was supportive in a way that she was always pulling for us to be together. Even through everything, like, she knew exactly what happened, and she was just like, okay, and... so support in that regard from us for a family unit. Like, she was like, you have such a beautiful family, and she was like, I see what's out there, and I know what's going to happen. Like, keep your family together at all costs. So she was always rooting for us in that regard. And my friends were plenty supportive, like when I opened up to them about what was really going on. And yeah, they said the same thing, like, why on earth would you, go so long without sharing? But friends, my sister and my mom, main support system.
Is there any? Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, and then each other, like as we were going through the couples counseling, like there was a lot of support that I had to give her as she was going through the emotions of, hey, this guy did all these things to me. Like, I have to process all this. So during couples counseling, I had to be there for her, for a while too. So, yeah.
This may be an obvious question, but is there anything you would do different?
Be faithful. I'm just saying, but and be sober.
Yeah, I probably would have left a lot sooner. Yeah.
She should have, because it's like the other part of it is you do what you can get away with, you know what I mean? So had she, and this isn't blaming her at all, but had she put her foot down or say, hey, I'm leaving, maybe I would have got my act together, but maybe I wouldn't have. Who knows? Maybe I would have still been on the same path. But,
missing out.
Right. But yeah, definitely the faithful part. I mean, I joke, but that's just something you don't want to.
Yeah. I mean, you all have an incredible story. You really do. And I'm so glad that you managed to keep your family together. And frankly, like, you as a grown man, it looks really good on you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
It really does. It really does. It really does. Like, what is it like raising two young black men together?
That's a good question. It's teamwork. Yeah, it's teamwork. It's interesting because we just have to be mindful of a lot, Like, I mean, they've had instances that we've had to address, with racist comments and, thinking about, Glenn when he starts driving, doing that talk about police and, listen, all police aren't bad. I'm not going to go there, but it's just something that they have to be aware of, things like that. So we do worry a little bit, but, we have to address it as a team. And,
Yeah, but I mean, it's been great. Like, I love being a mom. It's my favorite job out of all the things that I do. But yeah, it's a lot of things that we have to be concerned with, specifically because we're raising two young black men. But they're amazing kids. So, and just to see them like grow up and blossom and come into their own with their own individual personalities, it's been, a real treat.
They got her smart, so I can say that.
I mean, you're not far behind. Like
book smart.
He cheated off me most of the time.
Listen, like, I paid attention to my business classes. That's all I need to pay attention to. Everything else.
He is smart, but he did cheat off me a lot, though.
Yeah. So he's got your smarts and your what?
My humor.
Your riz, as the kids call it these days.
Yeah, and I guess critical thinking, just the way they think, they get that from me. Not saying that,
Whatever.
But they're able to just think and evaluate things and think outside the box.
Yeah.
And I don't think outside the box.
I mean,
don't answer that.
But it sounds like they're the best of the two of you, in a total package.
They got the best of our traits. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah. And the youngest one, we'll see, but he says that he's not going to drink.
Yeah,
he may not.
Like, hey, you don't have to.
You can have fun still.
Right.
Like,
He's like, Dad, you've been arrested before? Like, several times.
When I tell you, like, we didn't have group text, I don't think, at the time.
No, not at that time.
But we would check in with each other, like, to just recap from the night before and, like, fill each other in on the parts that we may not remember, right?
Oh my God.
But getting those calls to say, Glenn was arrested and Glenn this, and I'm just like, dude, like, But again, like, that was a time where frankly, the music was good.
Yeah.
The drinks were good.
Oh, man.
The company was good.
Right?
Right?
We
We
had
had
a
a
good
blast.
time.
Right?
Yeah.
And thank God we lived to tell about it.
Man, seriously, like, although there was some shenanigans, we had a good time.
We had a good time.
I
We
mean,
had a
we
good
partied
time.
a lot, man.
Yeah.
That's, God,
But I'm going to tell you, like, being able to be on this side of it, like, I'm glad to have exited that life when I did. Because I can't imagine getting older and not being willing to change or not being willing to evolve. And not saying that, like, drinking was a sum total of it, but for me, that was the catalyst. That controlled everything else.
Yeah.
So, like, to be able to, like, regain control in some aspects of it, or particularly not allowing for alcohol to, like, completely rule, like, that gave life a new meaning. You know what I mean? And it made tapping in. So now I go out, I meet with folks for dinner, or we go out or whatever, and we'll go and we got to bring our own bottles, and they'll bring bottles of wine, and I'm like, I have a lemonade, and then, we didn't have to come here. I'm not triggered. I just don't drink anymore. You know what I mean? So, like, but what does it feel like to walk in, like, that full healing?
Yeah, it's good. I mean, I can obviously identify with you on that. It's just being comfortable with being sober, and I think people that drink around you, they're more worried about it than you
like,
are.
I'm not gonna spiral. I'm good. I'm not getting a DUI when I leave here. Like,
but yeah, like you said, just being able to think clear, because now I have, purpose. You know, I'm thinking about helping people and using my story, and like she said, people have reached out to me and asked questions about sobriety and what they should do, and so there's more purpose and just being there for the kids and being there for her. So it's a lot better of a life.
Yeah, for sure. I think one of the coolest things of all of that is, like, there is no blueprint for it. Right. Like, all of us have our own journey and how we navigate that, and to be able to navigate it perhaps blindly, and then turn right around and be able to talk about it and share it, give it words, give it meaning. I think that's a very powerful space to be in. And for you all to be able to do that as a couple, like, that is incredible. I mean, we know that Black love exists, and we've seen it in in different variations through the years, but you all are among a very select few of couples that I know who have successful relationships. And I don't think that the hardships define whether or not success was attained. I think being able to be in peace and harmony with each other, even on the other side of whatever, ultimately defines success. So, like, kudos to y'all, like, for real. Because clearly it's work.
Absolutely.
It's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work. But I will say this, even though Glenn had a lot of demons or dealt with a lot of things, he joked. You said it was the devil, but whatever.
Alive and well.
I had to see him for, who he truly was just a person who was dealing with issues versus just an issue within himself.
Sure.
And being able to recognize that, on the inside, it was a hurt, young boy who was just finding a way to heal, and giving him that space and the grace to do that really helped me, because for a long time, even after we came back together, I regressed and I had to unpack a lot of things, and I had resentment and things like that. But just recognizing it for what it was, like, he's a human having a human experience, and no, is he perfect? Absolutely not. But, he had to go through his own healing journey, and that's why he was acting out, and he addressed it, and he was consistent with his actions and what he told me, and it was clear that he loved me and the boys. Like, so, letting all of that come into fruition, and forgiveness was a huge part of it, being able to forgive and just say it's okay. It's okay to, forgive, and it's okay to be happy, because at the time it was like, well, this is really good, but I should still be angry, So just letting go of all of that and just enjoying it for what it is. Like, we're, can be happy and we can enjoy it.
Well, we get to learn from your story through and by the About This Life podcast. Like, what are some of the topics you all address on the podcast?
Oh, man, everything.
I
I mean, what's the last thing?
We took people through the journey of, our relationship. Like, we gave you snippets, but, we go through the entire journey. We talk about, his dealings with alcohol. We talk about just every topic.
Things that come up, like us trying to get pregnant. We talk about, we're starting to bring guests on. We haven't aired the episodes yet, but we're starting to do that as well.
Nice.
So,
Just life topics. It's about this life. So anything that impacts us or we find interesting, we talk about it.
No, that's good. Is there a measure of that that's healing? Does it feel like therapy when you're recording?
That's a good question.
Yeah, that is a good question.
It just feels like us having a conversation. And that's what I wanted to bring to the audience. It's like, hey, this is date night. If you're on a date night with us, we're sitting around the table telling stories. This is what it's like. So that's what it feels like.
Yeah, because I don't even a lot of times want to know the questions or like her notes. I'll just know like the topic just because I just want it to be off the cuff.
Totally.
Just talking, non-scripted.
Totally.
Yeah.
But I have learned some things about him that I didn't know before.
Well,
I can't think of anything right now, but I know some things have come up. It was like, I didn't really know that before.
Was it the baseball story or something?
I think maybe that, yeah.
Yeah.
There's a couple things that popped up. Like, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Just I'm continuing to learn, about him and his past and things like that.
But I think that's come up because I've done some guest appearances on some other podcasts, and so with the questions that they ask, I end up sharing things that I haven't shared on the podcast, and not by purpose. It's just like, oh man, he's a really good.
We didn't go there.
Let's talk about,
Yeah. No, that's cool. That's so cool. So you all have tapped into this measure of transparency and vulnerability, not just with each other, but with your audience who you don't get to see. Right? Complete strangers.
Yeah.
So you mentioned a little bit about like being willing to share more about your story, knowing that like there could be folks judging, but not being concerned about that judgment. Like, what was that process like?
It was challenging for me because I am introverted, like to the core, and I'm a pleaser. So I deal with, wanting to make everybody happy. And, some people didn't think that it was appropriate to, share in that manner. But again, it's like, I feel like we have a mission, and our goal is to help people and to help transform lives and inspire people. And so it feels like, this is what it feels like. Literally, it feels like, I get this like flush over me, like it feels like heat, and I feel like the air around me is constricting when I'm going through that. When I'm in my head, like, oh my God, like maybe like a mini panic attack, but I just work through it. It may take me some days or weeks, but I just work through that because I'm like, you know what, it's okay. Like it really is. And that, like I said, at the end of the day, everyone has a story, and I'm just here to share mine and help people. So I'm putting my ego, to the side, and in efforts to be of service to the world.
The last thing I'll say before we wrap up, like, we live in an age where it's easier for folks to throw people away than it is to invest the time in kind of reconciling a relationship.
Yeah.
And that's why I think it's just so fascinating that y'all's story is what it is, right? And like, what would you recommend to folks who might be in that space of, do I walk away? Do I stay? Like, and then too, like, do I do the work or do I move on to the next relationship? Like, what will you all say to folks who are in those respective positions?
That's a good question. I mean, we both can speak on it because to add some context to my answer, it got to a point where, as we were going through couples counseling, I was getting to the point where I was thinking about leaving because although I was being there for her through couples counseling, I wasn't getting any of my needs met, and not like just the physical, but just emotional. Like I'm pouring into her, and I'm just not even getting like anything from her. And I'm like, I might have to walk away, but I just wanted to continue to do the work. I was invested. I didn't want to give up, and I knew like what our future could be. And so keeping that in mind and knowing that there's a possibility that we could work through this. Like, hey, we can get through it. If not, then yeah, I would have had to walk away if she couldn't see me in that different light, me as a sober, mature person. So it's really just a matter of like, how bad do you want it? And do you see yourself with this person? And if so, do the work, and hopefully, you'll hit that goal of breaking through those issues and repairing the relationship. But yeah, there are times where you ultimately have to, unfortunately, walk away. But that's just situation dependent. That person will know it at the time.
Totally.
Yeah. Absolutely. That's one thing that I was really conscious of. I didn't want our story, our podcast, to be an advertisement for struggle love, because I'm not an advocate for that. If you're in a toxic relationship, then you need to get out. So basically, if you have a person that's willing to do the work, if you're on the same page, if you have issues, but if you're willing to equally put in that effort, then it's probably worth exploring and seeing what you can do to salvage it. But you can't do it alone. It takes two people. And if you don't have that support, then yeah, it may be appropriate to end the relationship. I don't advocate wasting your time. Okay. Nearly as much time. I literally say on the podcast, don't do what we do. Like, don't do this. So you have to prioritize yourself, really know your worth, and value yourself. And, you will know in your heart, like if you have the partner that's right for you and they're willing to go the length, sure. But if that's not the case,
Well, I'm going to tell you, like, the growth in both of you, like, this journey, however difficult it might have been, really served you both well. Like, it really has. It really has.
I know it's been a while, but you've seen a lot of this stuff.
Man, So, but I'm going to tell you, though, like, to hear the stories and to hear it from your perspective, like, to hear it knowing that like, and you've experienced it, you've lived through it with him. I can't say that it surprises me that you stayed. And I'm just going to say this, like, even in college, it was clear how much you loved him. That was clear. That was always clear. Like, yes. Yeah, I would say so. Like, it was always clear how much you loved him. And even with all his foolishness, like, it was clear how much he loved you too. So I can't say that I didn't think that at some point it wasn't going to be you, because I didn't. Like, who else would it be? You know what I mean? Like, and then I think when you all had Glenn, was it Glenn the Third? When you all had Glenn the Third, like, this is done. So all the intricacies, that, in my mind, that part didn't matter, because they'll figure it out. Like, I mean, they've done it this long. Like, they got a kid now, they'll figure it out, right? But not knowing how. I think sometimes that's the hard part. It's like, how long is this gonna last? Like, this season doesn't guarantee that it's gonna be 4 weeks, 4 months, or 4 years. You know what I mean? And so to watch you stick through it, again, it's not a campaign for struggle love.
Right.
But I think it's one for, like, endurance and being forgiving and long suffering. Like, you can't make anybody be what you want them to be. But you can decide whether or not you subscribe to who they are, and then what they have the potential of becoming, and the work that they're doing in there. I mean, you just said that, and that's what you did with each other. But I'm not surprised that we're sitting here. I'm really not. I'm not. I am so not surprised. I'm not surprised one bit that we're sitting here, because I just remember, like, you being so business oriented that he's got to have somebody like you, like, to keep things in order. Like, we were fascinated that Glenn was as business minded as he was. I remember at one point, like, you were talking like real estate with a mutual friend's father, and we just like, we know he know nonsense. Like, Glenn gonna have to get his stuff together, you know? But like, being able to be in someone's life as they go through the variations of who they are, I think that part is missing from society in general, because we so desperately need people to be polished.
Yeah.
And can I stick it out with you while you're polishing? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I mean, you've done that for however you processed it. You've done it gracefully.
Oh, thank you.
You have.
Yeah.
You really have.
Like she said, she knew who I was. Like, all the partying and who I was, like, I still had some sense. Like, I was an entrepreneur for crying out loud. I was drunk on the weekend. I was still, like, doing my own thing. Like,
Yes. I joke that there were two Glens. The party Glenn, the Glenn that everyone saw on campus, and then who he was, like, when we were together, which is two completely different people.
And it was clear that it was. It was clear. It was so clear. It was so clear. But I'm glad that I experienced the party Glenn.
Right.
Like, I had a blast with the party Glenn. And I'm going to tell you, even sitting here in this moment, you couldn't have told me then that we could laugh and chop it up and just have such a good time without shots. Like, you couldn't have told me that the connection was genuine. I won't say genuine, but you couldn't have told me that the connection was as deep as it is. You know what I'm saying? We haven't seen each other in like almost 15 years, and like it don't even feel like it. Right. Exactly. You know? So yeah,
it's beyond the alcohol and the
totally,
partying.
totally.
You know? So we had some really good times. But yeah, just to reconnect, it's funny how it all happened.
Yep. Well, thank y'all so much for sharing your story. Like,
welcome.
This is incredible. And how can folks connect with you, and like, where can they find the podcast?
So we are on all platforms, so you can catch us on Apple, Spotify, all the major podcast platforms, and we are on Instagram at About This Life Pod.
Yeah, she always does a rundown. That's what I'm like,
Where we at?
The
Right.
Instagram handle.
Right. About This Life, I'm like, About This Life Pod. And then on Instagram, I'm at Shafondra Matthews. And
at Glenn Dougherty, JR.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much for joining us for the Public Narrative Podcast. I'm your host, Jhmira Alexander, and it's been a pleasure chopping it up with my college buddies. Thanks so much for joining us.